Thunder an all-time great team.
For a single season, one season, yeah, I do think they're 4 wins away, obviously, from being an all-time team. The 80-win thing to me is interesting, but can be a little unfair and misleading because while the NBA regular season has always been 82 games, your ability to add postseason victories, for the majority of my life as an NBA fan, it took 15 wins to win a championship. For the last 20 years, so I guess half my life, it's taken 16 wins. But before that, you could do it with 9. You know what I mean? You could, and so I looked at it a little bit.
Like that 68-win team in Philly.
Exactly right.
68.
So they couldn't get there even if they had swept the postseason. So I looked at it from a kind of different metric, which is, all right, who are the teams that won more than 65 games and won a championship? So that's 12 teams long. We can show you who these teams are. And for whatever it's worth, for my money, this kind of includes all of the teams in the discussion for best team ever, except for the 83 Sixers, the faux Sixers. And you like there's Wilt near the peak of his powers, Kareem right out of the league, the Lakers that won 33 in a row, the best Celtics team ever, 3 Bulls teams, the first ever Shaq-Kobe championship, the first real made big 3 in the NBA with the 08 Celtics, the Heat that won 27 in a row, and the first 2 Warriors championship teams. The Thunder would join that list. You then add to it, okay, who are the teams that won more than 65 games, a championship, and had the league MVP? It's an even shorter list. You then, like, the Thunder also have something they were unequivocally the best in the league at, as all those teams did. For the Thunder, it was defense. They were the #1 defense in the NBA this year. And so I am not, like, it's weird, Brew, because when we talk about the best teams in NBA history, we typically are talking about multiple seasons. We're talking about stretches of time. But if we are saying, the best single season, I don't think it's top 5, obviously. I don't think they're one of the 5 best teams ever. But if you say, hey, is this Thunder team away from having one of the 12 to 15 best seasons of all time? I think it's pretty clearly the answer to that is yes.
Well, like you said, first of all, win the championship first. All right? And we've seen great teams, lose in the finals. I'm not even going to talk about football because that's, we think the greatest team we've ever seen, that Patriots team, didn't complete the deal. That's a one and done. But in a 7-game series, look, the Shaq, Kobe, Karl Malone, Gary Payton, Lakers lost to Detroit. No one thought that was going to happen.
The 73-win Warriors.
Right, exactly. So you got to complete the deal, obviously. They look fantastic. The defense is, I think, one of those all-time great defenses. I think you can – I'm not saying they're as good maybe as the Bulls defense with Jordan and Pippen and Rodman, the Detroit Bad Boys, all those. But they're a great – legitimately a historically great defense. Whether or not they can be called an all-time great team, it feels like it's unfair, but they are going to have to, they're going to have to win multiple championships. They're going to have to show it. People were saying the same thing about, like, Denver's about to, after they won in 23, nobody was saying they were all-time great team, but they were saying they're going to win some more championships. Sure. Boston last year, people were starting to say, oh my gosh, is this going to become an all-time great team? Look, I get it what the stats say. The 68 wins is great. Top 3 defense, top 3 offense. The win, point differential was the best ever.
Because sorry to interrupt. The point differential, I think, can be a little misleading because as games become higher scoring, beating a team by 10 is less meaningful. The other highest ranking point differentials were in the 70s when the scoring was really high. Sorry to interrupt.
But I just think, too, I don't put as much stock nowadays in the regular season record as I used to because of load management. A lot of times the star or top players aren't playing. The prominence of the three-point shot so games can really get out of hand one way or the other. And then injuries. It feels like guys are injured more than they used to be. So with so few guys playing 75 to 80 games, the record, it just, I mean, Cleveland won 64 and had a point differential of 9. Boston had a point differential of 9, and they both went out in the second round. So people will look at it, and especially the analytics guys will look at their numbers in the regular season. Oh my gosh, all-time great team. What's going to have to happen, because right now they're a one-off. The only one-off, I mean one championship, period. The only one-off team that I consider potentially an all-time great is the 83 76ers. Moses Malone, Dr. J. Why? Because they had 2 Hall of Fame legends in their prime. Now, if Chet or Jalen goes on to show us in the next few years, they're a future Hall of Famer, one of them may become a superstar, then we'll look back at this team as better than at least I will, than I see it right now. But these guys have to emerge in the future.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about this. I'm like tempted to not really have this conversation because it just goes to show you how much of a nothing series this became, where they're not even opening the show talking about the game itself. And they're just like, is this an all-time great team? Because they're just like, what are we going to talk about? The game was easy. The game was over. Realistically, I was trying to think about this last night. I was watching this game. 3 minutes into the game, I mean, seriously, like realistically, it was like over within the first 3 minutes. And it was so funny because throughout the game, especially once the lead got really big, the broadcast team, Doris and Jefferson, it was pretty hilarious that they kept trying to act like the Timberwolves can come back. They're like, well, Ant can get going. Ant makes one shot, and they're like, this is what he does. He can get going at any minute. And a 3 by Chet Holmgren. Okay. And then Doris is like, this is really key. How the Timberwolves close out these final 3 minutes. And it's a steal and OKC with an easy dunk. It's like they were trying so hard to be like, the game, it's still, never mind. No, it's not. And so it became nothing. And so now, we're going to jump and have this conversation about, is OKC an all-time team? Personally, that conversation to me is really less interesting because you're starting to compare teams like the 83 this, the 77 that, the 94 this, and it's just like different style of ball, different types of players, different rules and regulations. It just kind of means nothing to me. And also it all depends on also who you're playing as well. Like Bruce talking about, he doesn't care as much about the regular season. And I think that's fair. And I think all basketball fans really feel that way now. We're all kind of just like, what do we do with the regular season? It just doesn't matter as much. We saw that with more people watch the NFL on Christmas than the NBA. And I used to be like, I can't wait for NBA ball. During the Christmas, excuse me. I couldn't wait. I was locked in. And I was like, let's go. And now it's like, I'll watch a football game. I'd rather do that. Those games at least actually matter. A Christmas game has no relevance on anything right now. And I do think the way how games are approached during the regular season, and so that's why it doesn't matter. So I look at the playoffs and I look at who you're playing as well. And I think the only way that the OKC ends up being considered an all-time team, especially when you're looking at it retroactively, is right. If SGA, Chet Holmgren, Williams, et cetera, they all become essentially like Steph, Clay, Draymond, for instance, right? Like you wouldn't have normally looked at the Warriors as being so historic until you look back and you say, whoa, dude, Steph, Draymond, and Clay. And then, of course, when you add KD, you're like, that's just different. And it doesn't even matter necessarily what even happened during the regular season and what the percentages were or anything of that matter. And then you also look at who they beat. They beat LeBron James, James Harden, Kawhi. Like they're beating other like all-time great legends, Hall of Famers, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, etc. And OKC is still kind of defining that right now. They beat Ant, but like Ant's like 23. It's different than if you beat Ant when he's like in his prime, 28, already won a ring or was already at the top of his game. If they win the ring, it's probably going to be against the Indiana Pacers. It's against Halliburton, who's also young. The Pacers haven't won anything yet. And I do think that some of those narratives and stories we tell ourselves matter, right? Beating Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal is a lot different than beating, Tyrese Halliburton, to be honest with you, Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, like it just hits different. It just does. And I think even if Ant turns into becoming the greatest basketball player in the history of the world, which I don't think is going to happen, but let's just say he does, they'll still look back at this series and say, well, he was only 23, he was young, he was a kid, he didn't really become the Ant that he once was. Just like when LeBron James lost in his first finals, nobody was like, they beat LeBron James. It was like, well, he was a kid and he had no help, kind of a deal. The best thing they have going for them is that the fact that they beat OKC, or they beat OKC, that they beat the Denver Nuggets, and that helps them. I think if they beat the Boston Celtics in the championship, that could have boded, that could have helped them a little bit. But again, I personally, and don't take this whole kind of segment as me being like, oh, this isn't an all-time team. Really, it's my long-winded way of saying of like, kind of like who matters, and it doesn't really matter, and it's kind of impossible to know. And when you talk about all-time great teams, it's a combination between looking at some stats and then looking at the stories and who you're beating, who you're playing. It's why the Eagles beating the Kansas City Chiefs was so much bigger, because they were going for a three-peat, and the way they beat them makes it so much more historic. If the Eagles just beat the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, the Bengals, any of these other teams, it would have been big and Philly was going to celebrate it, but it just hits a lot differently when you beat Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Spags, and the team that's going for a three-peat. Like it's just a little bit differently, and that's the one thing that, that's the one main thing that OKC kind of has going against them in that regard. But at the same time, I'm not going to hold that against them either right now. Like, that's why this conversation is something that I'm just like, it doesn't really matter. But the problem is when you beat the Timberwolves so easily, and this series was a cakewalk, it's just like, what else are we going to talk about? Are we really going to be like, what went wrong for Minnesota? What went wrong is that they're not a good enough team. What went right for OKC? They're an awesome team, and they're the best team probably in the NBA right now. So that's how it works. Like in a 7-game series, the better team's gonna win majority of the time, and that's what we just saw. End of take, end of conversation. No analytics needed. You don't need to be like, well, they scored this amount of points in the paint, and the turnover ratio, and like none of that even matters. It was like, this team's better than that team. End of story. End of take. That's it. But what about game 3? Doesn't matter. So it's just very cut and dry in that regard. And I just think OKC's been really exciting to watch. And I'm excited to see how Indiana's been playing too. Because for a long time, I had really thought that what probably would have been the most interesting finals either would have been a Warriors versus Celtics kind of rematch type thing, because they did beat the Celtics when, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum were on the younger side. So you can kind of see this kind of redemption, revenge factor, or the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the New York Knicks. And again, it's not because I think these are like the best teams or the most exciting teams, but I think just the narratives. And I think basketball is very narrative driven. Sports in general is very narrative driven. And I think it would have been cool to kind of see the Timberwolves with the Knicks and that kind of overlap of a lot of overlap players, Julius Randle, DiVincenzo, Karl Anthony Towns. Like it would have been pretty cool to see this kind of, all this kind of meet in the middle here. And I just think it would have been really interesting to see. But now, considering how electric and how quick and how exciting the Pacers have been playing, as well as OKC, I think it's cool. We're watching two young teams really rise to the occasion and really excel and really come into their own. But I think we have the potential, even though it's not going to be so narrative driven, and they're going to try. They're going to try to pit Tyrese Halliburton and SGA against one another. As like, whoever wins is going to be the face of the league and this or that. And I just don't see it that way, because these two superstars have the most, and I mean this in the most positive way possible. Lukewarm personalities. Like, they are just not in your face. Tyrese is a lot more playful. SGA is a lot more silent. Like, it's just, even their own brand of cocky is just like so much gentler than the ants of the world, the Russell Westbrooks of the world. So it's just like they're going to try to pit them against each other like it's a war, when in reality, I just think there'll be a ton of mutual respect and no bad blood. And we're just watching, two teams that are just ascending and coming into their own, immediate prime. And there's just no drama there. There's no animosity there. And again, it's two personalities that I think are just very, they're about the ball. And Tyrese is the one that is the closest you get to kind of bringing that a little bit chippy energy, but it's more like the Steph Curry brand of chippiness, where it's just like his brand of cocky is like night and stuff, and like kind of yelling at the fans. Like, it's different from like what an Ant does, or a Luka, or an Embiid, or a couple of these other like really big personality type guys. And so it'll be interesting to see the type of narratives and the type of storylines that they try to force upon us all during this finals. I mean, maybe New York comes back, but hardly see that happening. So it does feel like it's obviously going to be Thunder versus Indiana, which I'm a lot more excited for that matchup from an entertainment perspective than I would have originally thought. And because I already know how great OKC is, but Indiana just is playing such high level fast ball. And I just think these two teams could, give us a pretty exciting show, to be honest with you. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about OKC? Are you ready to call them an all-time great team before they even won a championship, before they even won one finals game? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. It's whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.